Hello.
Hey, Michael, I got a question for you. Facebook won't let me set up an account.
They know your reputation? Is that?
I must be a Chinese or Russian operative or something, but
No, they let them have accounts.
yeah, it's an interesting story. Maybe at some point we'll have a chat about it. It's not like I'm terribly disappointed, but it's just kind of curious.
It has its place, you know. You don't have to sell your soul. Yeah, tell me what they say and I'll take a look.
All right. They said I'm just bad. I don't know. I forget.
That's what I said. They know your reputation.
Yeah. I didn't.
Yeah, you can have pretty. As I find out every day, you can have pretty low reputation and low quality be a low quality person and have a great Facebook presence or have an extensive Facebook.
Liz, the YouTube live thing just popped up on my screen. I don't know if it's showing on yours.
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Cool. Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to the May 2021 meeting of the Sustainable Environmental Advisory Commission. Before we get started, I'm going to read this thing that I'm legally obligated to read to you. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held virtually. Members of the public who wish to comment as to an item on the published agenda must submit their statement or question in writing to elizabeth.zimmerman@skokie.org, and all properly submitted statements or questions will be presented and read during the relevant portion of the meeting. Written comments also may be submitted by email to publiccomments@skokie.org, by mail to Village of Skokie, attention Elizabeth Zimmerman, 5127 Oakton Street, Skokie, Illinois 60077, or via the village's Dropbox located by the public entry to Village Hall. Okay, and with that, we can get started. The first item on our agenda is an approval of the April meeting minutes. Is there a motion? Rick, second. Mike. Any corrections, anything to modify? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. The next item on our agenda is old business, which starts with an update on our sidewalk gap program. And for this, I'll turn that over to you, Liz.
Okay. Yeah, so I met with Russ Rietveld. He's our civil engineer, and Max, and we went through most of the locations that were prioritized by those of you that went out and helped do inspections. And what we were really looking for was, can we easily get this accomplished? Is this a sidewalk that we can, fill the gap in? And so with that in mind, we looked at a lot of locations. We have a budget, as long as the budget is approved on June 7th. It should be about $100,000 for sidewalk projects. That actually doesn't get you terribly far. And so, we're trying to narrow it down to a reasonable group of projects that, make sense this year. And then, Jenny, we're going to meet. That was the problem that I had, that one area up by Highland School, and we just wanted to meet with Jenny and look at that further. And so we're going to do that this Thursday. Once we get those locations, I think the next step would be for us to meet with the manager's office to kind of develop a protocol on how to, approach these sidewalks. So, we're working towards it. We're pretty positive that we can get some of these done this year. And that's kind of where we're at. We should know more at the next meeting for the final decision of which ones we're going to try to get this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Where's was the work that we did informative? Was it helpful? Did it tell you something that you hadn't known?
Yeah, no, it was extremely helpful. And I think the notes were especially helpful. I think knowing some of the uses of those areas were not maybe there during working hours, which locations are routes for the synagogues and, more school routes and things like that. And so I anticipate that we're going to be using this data for like the next, 5 years at least. We're not going to have to go out and do this again every year. We're going to be able to just use this data set for a long time.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed, and I don't know, this is just an observation, but there were a number of locations that I went by that were streets that were recently resurfaced. And it seems like when they resurface the streets, they just put in whatever. If there's a sidewalk there that's a curb walk, they just replace that curb walk. So it's, that if there's an opportunity to put in a sidewalk further in the right of way, then it doesn't seem like that's really given consideration. They just put in the curb walk, which in the situations where there was a curb walk, it really wasn't a problem because there was low volume, low traffic kind of area. But I noticed in the sidewalk, it was like, well, survey this sidewalk area, and in fact, it had just been resurfaced and rebuilt that year.
Yeah, I agree. I know exactly which neighborhood you're talking about. And
East Prairie Street is the one that was done, I think, this year. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the areas that's still a definite contender of the final list is that Hamlin one that you identified.
Mm-hmm.
That's a major thoroughfare. We obviously don't want pedestrians crossing from the residential over to the industrial. That's a busy street. There's a park right there. And so that was one that was not on my radar in particular. And of course, unfortunately, with the Lincolnwood fence, it's a little bit limiting because we can't go south, but at the very least, we have that entire residential neighborhood that can go north from that feeder sidewalk. So I thought all of those comments were great.
Okay, cool.
I have a quick question. When you do a curb walk, does it last less time than a regular sidewalk due to the salt from, what's on, as the plows go by? Does it not really matter because residents put salt on the sidewalks too? Is there any study on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I've never heard anybody mention anything, so I would say it's probably a non-issue. The biggest thing with the curb walks is we can't plow those with our sidewalk plow. Oftentimes there's a car parked, next to those curb walks, and there's just not enough room to do that. And so, when it snows, they really are quite useless. So that's the real problem. So we want to use those curb walks as a last resort. I would say that's the biggest issue with them.
Is there a restriction? Like, is it because the right of way isn't large enough to support a sidewalk?
Mostly, Emily, it's actually to save trees. So.
All right. Curb walks everywhere.
Yeah, it could be. We have a few unusual right of ways in town, not many, but like Williamsburg and Timber Ridge have shorter right of ways. So there are some in town where we have an unusual right of way as well.
Okay, well, we will look forward to what you guys I guess will present to us next month on where we are moving forward, and hopefully we can really dig into that list soon. Because
a route to school is clearly a priority. So
yeah. Okay. Next up, we have the other community sustainability plan review that we've informally been doing. It looks like there was a couple added since last time. Has anyone found anything interesting?
I found that there's not only for the village of Skokie, but there's also the Skokie Park District has a sustainability plan, as well as the library. And the thought occurred to me to somehow bridge those or incorporate those together so that there's some convergence. The library one was very general, as well as I think the library one was pretty general as well, but it might behoove us to review those and to see if there are ways that we can establish more formal coordination with those entities.
Yeah, I looked at the Skokie Park District site as well. And, there's quite a bit there, and it would be, I think, very beneficial to connect with them, at least to put a link on our webpage to theirs, because it really raises the activity to a whole new level. They seem to be doing quite a bit. So that was good. And I also followed up on some of the points that Lisa raised last meeting, some of the water committee priorities. And it seems that Northbrook, Riverside, Highland Park communities have a lot of activity related to native plants and water preservation. So I don't know if you know, how to convey that information other than just to send the links around and people can take a look at it. But they have very robust plans along these lines.
Yeah, I certainly think it would be interesting. I was just going to say, I think it would be interesting to take a look at you were saying about the Skokie Park District and library plans more. I haven't had much of the opportunity to do so. I think I was doing a lot more compare and contrast between what we have and other communities, but I think that would definitely be interesting to further assess and see where maybe, like as has been said, where we can coordinate. I
also checked into the Rain Barrel program, and we do have a link to that program listed up there on our website or webpage. But I dug into a little bit further, and they are $49 each, and that includes shipping. Home Depot sells the same unit for about $90, so I think it's quite a bargain. I don't know how many are taking advantage of it. But I was wondering, buildings or structures that either the village operates or the park district operates that utilizes rain barrels, so we could lead by example.
Yeah, our police station is the best example. It's our newest building, and so our entire irrigation system there runs off of a rain cistern, which is pretty cool. I can try to get you a picture, for the next meeting. We do use it on some PowerPoint presentations. Sometimes there's some challenges. The filters get a little dirtier. There's a little more maintenance with, but it's a neat system over there. So I would say our other facilities, there's not quite as much opportunity or even really landscaping that we have, but yeah, I can give some more thought to other facilities that might be a good candidate for rain barrels.
So Northbrook has a demonstration rain garden outside their village hall. And part of the reason they did this was because they were having a lot of flooding problems and their vegetation would just be washed out. So they installed this rain garden system originally in, I think, 2001, and it was recently refurbished in just last year. So that's another place we can look at for some ideas.
Yeah, we do have rain gardens at the police station again. And then also we did a partnership project with Devonshire Park. They were receiving a lot of flooding there. So there is some messaging over by Devonshire on their rain garden. And then the other, kind of location that I tried it in the past, but I didn't have success was the Skokie Valley Trail from Lincoln to about Oakton. That's all native plants in there. And I did quite a bit of work putting signs out for all the native plants, and they all disappeared over there. So it can be kind of a sad, discouraging challenge sometimes when you put the work in and then it doesn't last. So the signs there didn't last. I don't know if people took them or they were vandalized.
Yeah. Would there by any chance, since we do have some examples that exist also, I don't know if there are ways to further promote the existing examples. That seems like a potential thing, like for new Skokie or Skokie use, and kind of, I don't know, have a photo or two from, maybe one photo from each site at least, and kind of draw people's attention, I think, to that, and have an article that talks a little bit about that. That might not be a bad way to utilize what we already have as well.
I
Yeah.
wonder also if we could
Yeah.
put this online, like we could make a scavenger hunt online, because it will not get stolen if it's online. And we could put like, we could put like a map up essentially. And yeah, put that information online.
Liz, do you know if it's possible if we can do something with in front of Village Hall? There is some green space in front of the parking lot there, and then behind the, whatever those column things are, pillars, whatever.
Yeah, I'd have to, the one area that
Find out.
comes to mind is there's like that retention area between the library
Or
and
yeah, it's in between there. That
Um,
you'd think maybe signs might get stolen less from there, although people are still there at night, but
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny because we seem to be on the same wavelength this week. My subcommittee met and we talked about a few things, including how Village Hall should have solar panels and some wind generating in front of it. So this all seems like similar thoughts as far as taking the most visible place in Skokie and making it kind of a centerpiece for examples of all this stuff.
yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. It's called the Village Green.
Yeah, I can ask our facilities person on the solar panels for the hall too. I don't know what the condition of our roof is and things like that, but I can get more information.
But even if it's not, totally decking out the entire roof with solar panels, we can do something solar.
Yeah,
I love the idea of putting out a big wind turbine in front, or even a small wind turbine in front, and having it power the Village Hall's microwave or something.
Mhm.
I mean, it would be great to have it there to demonstrate all the things that we're doing with the sustainability and stuff too. The rain garden, like anything we're doing, I think can be shown off at Village Hall too, which would bring more attention and more attraction for everything we're doing.
I don't know, short of also installing it. I mean, I think as well that would be a great thing, because there's a potential, to demonstrate certain technologies or systems. Also, I would venture to say, obviously, there's some substantial cost savings to be had, especially over the longer haul, by installing something like solar panels and that kind of thing. But in the event that for whatever reason that weren't possible, and I really would hope that it is, I know we also had, I don't know if you remember, but we had the solar program a while back. I don't know when it was a few years ago at the library. And there was like that sort of demonstration house thing, even something like that, sort of as a plan B, if the other stuff isn't doable. In front of the library or Village Green, that would also be potentially. I don't know why we wouldn't be able to do something more substantial, but at least even a temporary installation like that, if we could get that done, that would be also a potential solution of sorts. I'm just thinking.
Came up into my sub because we were kind of reviewing the goals that we had set a few years ago, and one of them was kind of reviewing usage in buildings, Village of Skokie buildings. And so, that raises the immediate thought, why aren't we putting up something like solar panels and reducing energy that way? I mean, we're pushing solar so hard the last couple of years, making strides.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying that if there is a reason that there's a delay in it, for instance, I don't know what, you were saying about roof condition or whatever it is, if something else needs to get done first, maybe there's a way to do a temporary installation, and then after that's resolved, obviously retrofit Village Hall, say, and so that it has a permanent solar panel system. I'm just saying in the interim.
Yeah, you may be able to only do 1 or 2 of these at a time, but it's a step-by-step process. And if people see this example at Village Hall, or these examples, I think it really does make an impression. One thing that struck me about these other plans were that the village government was actively doing something. They weren't just telling citizens or encouraging citizens to do it. They were starting to do things. And it seems like it goes in fits and starts. The rain garden was established and then it kind of fell apart and it was reestablished. And but it's still, it sends a message.
Out of
So
curiosity,
Go ahead. Sorry.
out of curiosity, has anyone seen that position that Evanston is hiring for, the sustainability and resilience coordinator? Because it seems, take a look at that on I can put it in the chat room on Evanston's site. It's basically they're hiring a sustainability czar, I guess, to pull together all of Evanston's, basically take Evanston's plan and make that stuff happen. And we're talking about coordinating with all these with the park district and the library and things like that. Seems like a role like this might be a good thing in the midterm to aim for. I'll show you it. And it's really an interesting position. I'll put it in the chat room right now.
That position already exists at Evanston.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah, it's a position that already exists and has existed for quite a while. And the person in that position is the one who wrote the plan. And what? Sorry.
Oh, is that Kumar's? Is a different position?
Yeah, it's Kumar.
Okay.
Yeah. But one of the things that I would say is that there is a little bit of a disconnect between like creating these ideas and developing this plan and developing these ideas and then actually being the one, being like the staff who's actually enforcing it, right? Or like being the staff who's enacting it. And so like one of the big examples out of Evanston right now is the leaf blowers, like, right, that there's a big push to eliminate leaf blowers throughout Evanston. But there's also a really big push to ensure that the little kids have really clean soccer fields to play on that don't have leaves on them, right? And so there's a disconnect between those two things. And so I think that there's definitely a place, to encourage sustainability. But I would certainly encourage a lot of communication and a lot of connection with the current village staff who's actually going to be on the ground every day doing the work.
Okay, can I mention something? I just got something came this afternoon from Julie Yusum from the Wilmette Chamber. I don't know if this is Wilmette thing or North Shore, because it says community solar for North Shore small business and residents. And it's a seminar tomorrow at noon on Zoom. And I have the link if anybody wants it. Community solar webinar. And I don't know, are we connected with that in any way? Is that a Wilmette thing? I don't even know.
No, community solar is generally available.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm hooked up.
There's a seminar tomorrow at 12 to 1, it says.
Okay.
On Zoom.
So one of the things that I think that, with these plans and with these ideas is that there's a lot of, obviously we're the village, and obviously the things that we can actually sort of have an impact on are village operations / ordinances, regulations, village code. And I'm wondering to what extent we need to think about also how we can encourage community members to participate as well, because I think that creating demonstrations is a great idea. And I think that it really can, I think that it can really be encouraging, but that will be to community members who are already motivated and who are seeking these things out. And so how can we make these things more accessible to community members who maybe are not, are not as knowledgeable or, are like see these things as maybe not quite attainable? Like, how can we make them much more accessible? Because, they might tell themselves, well, the village can sort of like has the resources to do whatever they want, right? They have the resources to be able to decide that they want to put solar up or decide that they want to get a contract and have a rain garden well maintained in front of Village Hall, unless that's being done in-house. And then I apologize for getting that wrong. But I mean, that's the point, right? Is that like, how can we create an atmosphere where these things are accessible to community members as well?
I will say, I think that, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I think that like also a big part of that might be, right now, I think the safest way to do it would be kind of webinar, obviously, if we do something. But at some point, hopefully in the not too terribly distant future, I'd like to think it will be safe to perhaps do even in-person things at some point. You know, I'm sure it's anyone's guess as to when exactly, but whether it's virtual or whether it's in person, I think that having webinars or other community events might be a good way to kind of address that. I don't know what you think, you know, but I think if we did more outreach, like active outreach that way, like I said, there's no reason even a virtual thing for now couldn't do the trick. If it was promoted through the library also would help, or Chamber of Commerce or whatever it may be. I think that might be a good way. And
Yeah, and then beyond that too, like if we're talking about rain gardens, you know, like how to install a rain garden, do we also like find a way to support and promote like a plant sale or something where these plants are available to village residents and they're easy to pick up, right? Something like that. Or, you know, things along that line where it's actually like some of the barriers are sort of reduced, right?
Yeah, could you, I don't know if they could do like a 2-in-1 where you have like a seminar / plant sale thing.
I think hasn't Emily Oaks done a
Yeah,
sale?
they
I mean,
do
that would be a good one.
they do a native plant sale with their Earth Day event, but then they also have them available for sale for a while after. So maybe if we were to do something in the time frame where they still have plants available, or if we planned it far enough in advance, we could have them, you know, support us on the plant end.
I have to say that, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish, Jenny.
Oh, I was gonna ask Emily a different question, so go ahead.
Well, I have to say when Emily asks or says about, you know, how people basically kind of, I think about finding stuff out passively, and I think about things like solar panels, and you know, the kind of this idea of yeah, maybe you see the village doing it and you think that's inaccessible to you, but I walk around my neighborhood and I see, you know, little tiny Skokie houses, and they have a bunch of solar panels up on their house, and it's like, wow, they're doing solar. There must be, you know, it must be relatively easy for me to do, which is one of the reasons I always liked the solar event, that they at least used to have the solar open house they used to have, which seems to have kind of died out in the last few years. But you know, an event like that in Skokie, where basically people open up their houses to anyone who's curious about solar, and that's your actually neighbors. Same thing with gardens. You know, you walk around your neighborhood and somebody has pulled out their front garden, planted native stuff, and they have a no mowing sign, or you know, whatever signs they are. That's where I see kind of people feeling like they can be a part of this because the people around them are a part of it.
I have people, whenever I'm out working on my yard, I'm on a corner lot, and whenever I'm working on my yard, I have people routinely asking me about the solar panels on my house. I think Michael, you're on to something there. Having that kind of routine, kind of just neighbors talking to neighbors is a great way to promote that, because it's, and I sometimes get involved in some extended conversations and never finish my yard work because I'm talking about various experiences with solar panels, and there are quite a few more of them that are going up in the neighborhood. So it seems to be that there's quite a bit of activity there.
So I wonder if maybe
Yeah,
maybe you're right. Maybe we should have some sort of event. Sorry, Jenny. And just
Skokie
ask
open
neighbors
house.
who would be willing to, you know, to sign up to to allow neighbors to come by and talk.
There used to be,
solar.
I think it was the Illinois Solar Energy Association that organized that. Who organized that?
That was a North. That was, I mean, that was a Chicagoland thing, and you could go throughout the North Shore. And last time that they did it, they were like, I don't know why, it seems to have just lost steam. But you know, I did it years ago when solar wasn't anywhere near what it was now. It was like you really had to be committed to installing it. And you know, last time they did it, there were 1 or 2 Skokie houses, and you know, I see solar panels everywhere when I'm out running or anything. So, and you'd think that people get so many questions about these things. And not only that, we've got an installer in Skokie who possibly would be able to participate with this, who possibly has done enough Skokie houses that they may actually be involved as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really good idea, way to just get people all over. You don't have to go to Village Hall, go to the library for a meeting. You can, it's something that can happen, you know, all day on a weekend day. And we can do something for solar and something for maybe native gardens or something.
Or any aspect that we're doing with the
Yard
commission.
care related. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Composting would be another one. People would be really interested in
just-
seeing and hearing from people who are doing it. Because I agree, when
Yep.
the question was first raised, I thought, oh, just hold all these at block parties. Because that is the way to do this, at the very local level, the block level.
Is there, yeah, I was thinking for the time being then, since we're talking about maybe having these conversations, granted, it's not as organically, so to speak, as if these conversations occur spontaneously while you're doing yard work or something. But I was wondering if there might not be a way to even have, you know, over the internet, sort of the neighbor conversation series where we can get some people who might be willing to talk about their experiences doing these various things. And I don't know what you think of that, but like just to start off that way. So I see it seems pandemic friendly and can even do something like that. Yay, nay, I don't know what anyone's thoughts are on it.
Although, I mean, if you don't really need to be in the neighborhood if you're doing it on Zoom. So the idea is, you know, it's summer, we can be outside.
Yeah.
Going around and actually seeing how people do it, see how it's set up. I think that's a lot more effective than.
I also
there's
think a lot of people are
seminar.
probably pretty tired. Like people are really want to get outside. Maybe I'm just projecting because that's how I feel. But, like,
I don't think you're projecting at all.
face to face
Yeah.
conversations, no more
Based on my
Zoom.
based on my experience this
No more Zoom,
weekend,
right.
people are dying to get out and actually talk to other people.
Yeah.
So there is a tool on the EPA website for people to calculate their home greenhouse gas or their home impact. But I was sitting here thinking about how wouldn't it be nice also to have some data so that, you know, not only would you see the solar panels and talk to your neighbors about it, but maybe they would even be able to tell you what their annual savings were and what their reduction in greenhouse gas was. And we might have to help. So there are people who are volunteering to let people come by and talk to them. Maybe we could support them with helping them with the data collection. Because I think that would be compelling. You know, I saved this much money, or I.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
you know, Robert, we used to have regular sessions where we talked about solar, and there are tools that do exactly that. Will help you calculate what you could generate from your house, and also there's a fair amount of data in terms of savings from solar. I think a lot of things just got kind of blown out of the water with the pandemic and
Right.
a lot of those things.
So we're going to start it back up.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to start that stuff back up.
Does that include, and so does that include also the resource, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the carbon footprint of the actual panels and the actual like development, like the actual
Life
manufacturing?
cycle analysis.
The stuff that I looked at, no, it doesn't go into that detail. The tools that I looked at are the kind of tools when people are looking at solar panels, they want to know how much power they can save.
I know,
So
yeah.
so there are tools that will show you how much power you can generate. They're very accurate. In terms of the overall carbon footprint of solar panels, I'm not sure of a tool that would look at that. I mean, it would be interesting to look at the EPA tool that Robert is talking about in terms of carbon footprint, you know, and that kind of thing. And, you know, the sort of the whole, you know, end-to-end supply chain and life cycle of various things and look at the carbon impact of that. But I'm not aware of anything, or I haven't used any tool like that.
And honestly, as someone who looked recently at solar panels, the bigger question, bigger than how much you're saving the environment, is at what point do they pay for themselves?
Sorry, Emily, I had a question earlier. When you were talking about sort of the disconnect between the putting all this plan together and then actually implementing it, connecting to the staff level, do you think having that sustainability coordinator is doing what it's supposed to do? And as you're seeing it in Evanston, do you think that would help us in Skokie? do you think without it, we can really accomplish what we're trying to do?
It's a great question. And I don't know if I know the answer. What I can tell you
Okay.
is that I
Anything
think that,
else?
yeah, I think that the plan, I think that we can accomplish those things if we are very deliberate about the way that we develop the plan, so that there are, measurable goals and measurable outcomes and measurable, and a very realistic look at what we can accomplish as a village. And also, what is actually within the capacity of village staff also, right? And think about it that way. And so it's sort of a really fine balance between being very idealistic and sort of like having these sort of grandiose ideas, and then being able to say, okay, and how do we still, like, how does the village still accomplish what it needs to accomplish, for its operations, while meeting these goals. And so, I mean, yeah, I think that Skokie could definitely accomplish those goals. I think that it could, how the plan is written could make a huge difference. And I also think that having a coordinator would probably help. I mean, I think extra staff is always helpful. So,
Well,
I'm not sure that it's like, I think it can be both.
I
Well,
mean, the
one of
question,
the things I've thought about is that we have multiple government. I mean, Evanston government is structured differently. So,
Yeah.
But we have the village, we have the park district, we have the library, we have high school district, we have multiple school districts, all in the same location.
Yep.
They're all trying to, in some way or another, trying to do similar kind of things. It seems to me that either it could be a joint position. I don't know how realistic that is, or it could be a contract with a contractor that these local entities share, and to come up with a coordinated sustainability plan, which would include both the operations of those organizations, looking at sustainability functions within those organizations, but then also from a policy perspective, what kind of policies and things. And that, I think we're looking at it from more of a policy and operations side. I don't know if there's a formal like sustainability initiative within the village government. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that the staff is doing that they're looking at. They're trying to promote these kind of things. I don't know if it's formally organized, but that kind of thing could potentially be formally organized and looking at things like benchmarks and data and tracking the progress and establishing priorities over time, so that we're not trying to do too much in one time, but we're really focusing on things that can be accomplished. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to have that kind of coordinated function within, this particular geographic area among these various entities. Now, like a city like Evanston, the library is part of the city government, the park district is part of the city government. So we're in Skokie, there's separate
Yeah.
entities.
And there would certainly be questions about, if you do create a plan and it is coordinated between these agencies or these entities in Skokie, as opposed to Evanston, how do you account for the funding, right? And how do you account for the fact that like a lot of these things do cost a lot of money? And so how do you account for, like, the library could come back and say, well, we just don't have the budget for that, right? We just don't have the budget to put solar panels on our roof. And so that's kind of I think coming back to what you were saying, Charlie, it's like, well, how do you work together with these entities to create goals that are realistic and achievable, right? To make it a net positive instead of creating this plan with goals that just can't be met by all of the entities.
well, the one question I have we should ask is like for Liz, like how would having this position, how much would that help you guys, since you guys deal with so much more than just the sustainability stuff, but you have taken on most of the weight of this whole commission and what needs to be done outside of, what we do here. I mean, how would that help you guys?
Yeah, I mean, just to be, I guess, candid and honest, I spend quite a bit of time on this, and then we meet, and I'm taking notes here, and I think I have about like 27 more things to do, just from the last 15 minutes that we've been talking, and so it can be a challenge for sure. Like I was still working on, some of the things that we've been talking about for the last couple of meetings. Like these aren't easy things to accomplish sometimes. Some of them are, some of them aren't. The marketing, I've been trying to dig deeper into, like, just as you were talking of like what is really working with outreach, going into a lit search of scientific articles and figuring out, what methods of marketing outreach work for recycling and those types of things. Well, I mean, that alone, just doing the research to get to the next step takes a couple of days. And so obviously another position would be helpful. We have had conversations about, could we split a position, with a neighboring town. And these are just preliminary talks. They haven't been brought into the budget or anything like that. So we do think about that. As we were interviewing the greenhouse gas vendors, they did mention that there's pros and cons to having a specific position like Evanston does. They said on one hand, you've got somebody that's got those overarching goals and reaches those different departments, and it provides some continuity. And on the other hand, people look at that person and they say that person's responsible for sustainability. I'm not. And so, there's some pros and cons to, having that position and the different structure that you pick. So, and obviously cost is a factor. I mean, we're not in a great financial year right now. So it's do we continue to look for opportunities that, like the community solar, that are essentially free to us, that have a high impact in the community? I think there are still a lot of those out there as well.
The other thing I would add also is that certainly in Evanston, that position does not have a budget for any type of implementation. So like those budgets are aligned with other city staff. And so going back to what you were saying was like, if that person says, well, we need to implement this like waste reduction project or something, that would actually just then fall back on Public Works to essentially to do that and to figure that out. And it would have to fall back on the Public Works budget. And so then, that's so then that becomes an interesting conversation of, okay, well, this person, has decided, like that position has decided that this is a good project to implement. And then how do you create that bridge with the entity within the village that's actually going to do it, right?
Well,
one of the things we keep saying that this is going to take a budget. And one of the things I really appreciate about some of the work that Max has done is he's looked at sustainability things, just incorporating them into normal operations, right? So, like the treatment to the roads that Max did this winter, that's a case where they have to spend money to salt the roads or clear the roads. So looking at that through a sustainability lens, they're able to achieve a sustainability goal within the normal operations of Public Works. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that. I would really like us to stay away from this idea that this is going to cost us extra money. The reality is sustainability, it makes economic sense. Not being sustainable does not make economic sense. That's my basic premise. And I think
the cost, it's not necessarily that there's a cost in doing things in a sustainable way, because part of sustainability, as we always talk about, is economic sustainability, but the cost is more
the transition.
Right, getting us to a place and having somebody there.
Correct. But there are opportunities, routine opportunities, where we can do things that are sustainable. And that's how I'd like this conversation to be focused. Not like, oh, we need to spend extra money to be sustainable. No, let's think about doing sustainability as part of the way we just do things.
So Charlie, absolutely.
That's the idea behind the plan, but the problem is who is there on a day to, Max is thinking about this probably more than other departments, maybe, because it's, he's in.
And there's also, sorry.
No, good.
No, I was just going to say, there's also, like, coming back to what you were saying, like, implementing can cost money. So, like, if we, like, for example, if we decide, like, well, we want to have all village vehicles to be electric by 2030, when that's like not a reasonable cycle of recycling out the village
Right.
vehicles, right? Then that's like purchasing vehicles and actually like having a carbon footprint impact that's actually not reasonable. And so setting that goal without communicating with village staff as to whether that's actually a reasonable like and effective use of like village money to become sustainable, like that's actually not sustainable. It seems like it would be sustainable, but it's actually not.
Right.
When you look at sustainability sort of in a much bigger way than just purely getting rid of like gas or diesel powered, vehicles. So I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. And then also like, when like it might not like I understand what you're saying and I appreciate what you're saying, that being sustainable in the long run would be a cost savings, but sometimes also the way municipal budgets are set up, like that money has to come from different places, or like it's not allocated the same way, and so that money is not always available to spend on things that are sustainable because it's like in a different column in the budget and needs to be reallocated or whatever it is, like, and it could be like one-time money versus like annual money, and so I think those things are like where it gets really complicated, and without an understanding of that, I think it can sort of create these like money issues, even though like the overall impact of sustainability is a cost savings.
But ideally,
I
this
would think
position
though
is
we're
communicated.
let's
I go?
Mike, go ahead.
I was just saying, ideally, this person isn't stepping in and shoving sustainability down every department's throat. This is a bilateral thing where they're working with departments and coming up with reasonable goals.
I mean, that's the ideal, right?
Yeah,
But I mean, politics are politics, but it's hard to say, well, this isn't, this. I understand that there can be difficulty. All these things are political, and they're political in Evanston, and they're political in Skokie, and that's just part of what happens. Everything we're doing is political as well.
But even in the absence of having somebody specifically in this position, that I mean, if there's nobody who's a sustainability coordinator, then that action or whatever is still going on. Then it's us who is putting that out there and then trying to connect with the appropriate department. So it's not like having a sustainability coordinator without a budget is, I think it still gets us closer to where we want to be, because we're a commission without a budget. We are trying to get these ideas that we have into the appropriate departments, but we're doing so on a less, I mean, we would not have as much time to do it as somebody that's their full-time position or even a part-time position. So that those actions are still there.
I mean, I would just say,
does it?
like Charlie, your point with, the salt is a great example. And maybe that seemed really easy when it was in a presentation that took us weeks and weeks of work,
Right.
Oh, sure.
So, I mean, that was a lot of research, that was seminars, that was having training with our staff, that was implementing technology under the trucks. Actually, it was probably several months of work if I'm really going back and kind of accounting for all of that time. And so yeah, it's definitely an umbrella. We have to look at everything that we do under a lens, but that does not mean that it doesn't take work.
Exactly. I mean, that's where like the coordinator and stuff would know these things and work with these other departments and stuff. I mean, it's not like the idea of the saying is that someone's thinking like, you work within the budget of what you do. You got to know what your entire team has available and the resources, and you work with that. And that's where you allow you the efficiency to get better and stuff. I mean, right now, we're putting so much on Liz and Max that we can't keep up with these ideas we want to do. I mean, some of them won't even cost money potentially, or like with just getting village employees to understand what their contribution can even be done that will make an impact and stuff too. So, I mean, there's parts where we're missing things, and nothing against Liz and Max. I mean, they've done so much. It's just, we're at that point is where if we want to go to the next level, we need to be able to go to the next level.
I was
There's just to throw this out there. There's AmeriCorps has a program where they have these sustainability, maybe the coordinators, I forget what they're called, but it's through AmeriCorps, and I think they're 1 or 2 year terms. I'm forgetting a lot of the details right now, but they work with municipalities on a short-term basis. The cost is probably less than you'd pay somebody be hiring for a normal staff position, but they would help us get to where we need to be potentially kind of like when we had the, was it UIC students, but, you know, one person doing this, not just as part of a class, but that this is their job.
Yeah,
Well,
I was going to ask if there
that is
might not
gonna have
be some
turnover.
grants available. You know, I think there might be grants out there for such a position or someone to come in for 1 or 2 years to at least start this.
If you're gonna do this
Right.
position, don't half-ass it. I mean, that's the problem is with doing 2 years or something like that too. These projects are some of them longer term. And you're gonna get
Well, I
that
know-
turnover and they're gonna
Right.
peter out again. I mean, that's
Well,
what
but-
happens with these programs. I mean, sadly, with these type of programs,
mean-
with the progress you want to make, they're gonna peter out.
Unless you define it as the first step towards a permanent position. This is a step-by-step process.
Right, I mean, right now we have nothing, so it also has a potential, you know, it can be there to show whoever wants to know, or, you know, it may not think that it's a position that the village should have, but it shows its usefulness or not. You know, it's kind of a way to test that out and see if there's need for that.
Well, I mean, I've seen seen some of what you're talking about, and honestly, some of the results I've not been impressed with. And it's also as you have people coming from the outside who have no understanding of what the local situation is even to begin with. So some of that local knowledge is critical, especially for how we're structured and stuff.
I mean, I agree with you, but if we're coming from a position of having nothing to advocating for hiring a full-time position, you know, that's a big jump, especially when there's
I'm
budgets
just bring
involved.
this full circle to get back to the agenda. And so, you know, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the greenhouse gas inventory, because I think that's an important component. You know, we have to kind of stay on our track here. We've entered this track of, you know, we're going to complete this inventory. I think that's going to give us a lot of information on priority, right? I mean, like we kind of need to stay on that track and see how that comes back and have this outside person and vendor, you know, I take a really good look at the village operations and the community as a whole and kind of see what our priorities need to be. And so we're on, you know, we're on track to do that. We have a vendor picked out. We're waiting to call that vendor and let them know until the budget is approved. June 7th. We don't see any reason why that's not going to be approved. And so I think we're on really good footing for that to be the first next step. And, you know, kind of see what information we get back. And, you know, maybe they identify that as a strong need for us. So, you know, maybe if we just kind of let some of this process take place, we'll have some answers soon.
That's good news, Liz. Yeah, and I would agree. I think we need to proceed. I mean, whether there's a sustainability coordinator or not, I mean, how that would actually work. I mean, I think it's obviously a complex thing, but you know, we have the greenhouse gas, which will get us inventory, which will get us some data. I think that's important. And then we have this sustainability plan that we're looking to put together. We can certainly put one of the objectives as a more formalized sustainability function within the municipality, whether it's a coordinated function with other entities or whether it's solely within the village. But we can certainly examine that, what that would be and what the feasibility is and how that might be structured as part of the sustainability plan.
Yeah, and you know, we're just entering a new budget year, so the timing isn't working out to really even have that discussion now. But the information that we get from the inventory, I think, is going to be great moving forward for the next budget cycle.
And, you know, just to be fair, also, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm advocating against. I think maybe what I would say is that I think that if we build this in a very deliberate way and we're very thoughtful about how, you know, what these interactions would be, it would be it would be a much more efficient and organized, you know, way to go about it, I guess is what I would say.
All right. Sorry, wrong. Okay. On that, I think let's move to our new business on the agenda. Soul Smart update. The code changes is there first. Liz, if you want to
Yeah, so I talked to Matt Brandmeier, I think last week. He said everything's going along pretty well with that. So he's reviewing the code and he's hopeful to bring something to the board late this summer. And just as a recap again, that's just to make some minor code changes to earn us that gold Soul Smart. So once he moves forward with that, then I can create that solar landing page and we can submit for that that designation and hopefully attract some, some more solar interest here. And we can certainly do some marketing around that as well. Maybe that's a good opportunity, to tie in with the timing of what Michael's talking about, where we would do, some sort of project right at like the release of our new code changes or, something like that. So we'll stay tuned for that. And then while I had Matt on the phone, he said, hey, we're really looking at the, the EVs. There's a bunch going in over at Old Orchard. They want to really create a streamlined EV-friendly permit process. And we're keeping an eye on the federal infrastructure plan as they want to install 500,000 devices by 2030. And so we're trying to keep an eye out to see if there's grant funding for that. Skokie's a really great, we're kind of in a great location for what they call corridor funding because we're right next to the Edens. So, we'll just continue to watch for those opportunities.
Thanks. Next, we've got collective resource compost meeting. Jim and Jim's not here, so I guess I'll report on that. Or Liz was there too, but we had a meeting with Arlene, Arlene Howard of Collective Resource. We had talked about this at our last meeting to try to figure out how we can get the program to grow. And then we also wanted to clarify a little bit about in the franchise agreement, they agree to staff or provide composting services for some village events, but not Backlot Bash like they did originally. That's too big. We can do that, but that'd be something that we'd have, or the Backlot Bash committee would have to pay for. But something like the boards and commissions dinner, if hopefully that happens again next year, as that we thought that would be a good place because size wise, as long as they can work with, assuming it's at the Holiday Inn, but it's people who have connections in Skokie, so it would be a good place to kind of advertise the program. We talked about getting it into schools, which obviously right now is not really an option, but maybe at some point next year, as school lunch systems go back to normal, it's something to discuss. I think it was Fairview that she said I forgot if they've signed on or they're just looking into getting into the program, but just to see how that goes, to try to have other schools be able to follow that model. And then also because, as we always say, if kids are learning in school, then they bring it home. And it's just a good way to spread that out there. So we didn't come away with anything groundbreaking, but just kind of try to have more discussions on how to get the program to continue to grow. I think we're up to 205, 208, 210, something like that. Liz, do you remember?
Yeah, it was 211. And then the other thing that we did talk about, this is an idea from Bob, were the signs. So the new customer might be able to kind of borrow a sign temporarily, or they would put a sign out temporarily saying, new composting customer. And they're very concerned about making plastic signs. So they want to just make it where that person would have it for a while and they would just keep reusing those signs over and over again. But
yeah, like a sign.
I just got off of doing a lot of research on the marketing, and it really seems that positive peer pressure. So it's like door, like face to face and then also having that knowledge that your neighbors are actually participating in the program seems to be, one of the two top things that motivate people to sign on.
I wonder also if we could I don't even know how we would go about doing this, but figure out a way to raffle off a couple subscriptions, 1-year subscriptions or something, just to encourage participation.
Like a match program?
Yeah, or maybe we could get people to sign up, and then when you sign up, you enter a lottery where it'll be where two people, two families will have their subscription reimbursed for a year or something like that. Like a drive.
We would, and we have no budget as a commission.
Yeah, right.
We seem to be the only commission that doesn't have a budget. I mean, I know at budget hearings this past week, the commissions all appeared and presented their budgets. We've never had a budget. For small things, we've worked with Public Works budget, like the rebate for composters. This probably would be about the same amount of money, but I think that's a cool idea. If that could come from Public Works budget, or if maybe for next year we can have a real budget.
So my video didn't go viral, I take it.
I think Liz said there were 10 new signups.
Yeah, I think we had, and actually I haven't gotten updated information for Arlene, so it could be more. So I think, Bob, we had 11 signups, but again, I haven't talked to her in a few weeks. And so, on the onset, it kind of seems like 11 signups, but I think the tonnage that's generated by 11 families certainly makes that effort worth it. And then there's this intangible benefit of right, like we just said, those families are going to talk to other families, and so it's about gaining momentum at this point, I think.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
Why don't we have a budget if all the other commissions do? And how can that be changed? I don't understand.
Yeah, so this year we do have a budget of $20,000 for the greenhouse gas inventory. I don't know the history on why the commission didn't have a budget. I would assume it's just lack of funds, right, when the commission was started. So I don't have an answer for you, Libby. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think we're one of the more recent commissions. Am I correct in that? We're one of the newer commissions. So, but it just seems like eventually that has to be rectified. I mean, it just doesn't seem equitable at all. It's just not.
Well,
So
yeah,
I think a small budget would be helpful.
yeah, I mean, I think that might make, I don't know if there is even the opportunity, or the possibility of doing that. But yeah, I mean, I think if there is a possibility of doing that, that might make, because it sounds like there is some potential need for that. So.
It's not for lack of asking, but
Oh, I'm sure.
It's always been, we can put that into, that can come out of Public Works budget.
I see.
But I mean, we've also, a lot of the other commissions, aside from the ones that pay, they have specific things that they pay for or they spend money on, and we haven't had that, although I guess we've asked for it, but we've had small things that Public Works has always been able to use their budget for, but
I think we have to be very careful about the budget thing. I mean, because if we had a small budget, we'd probably get into all kinds of debates about what to do with it. I almost like the idea of having project specific budgets. So like the greenhouse gas, $20,000 for the study there. I think that works if we have a very specific purpose. But if we had a budget that we didn't really know what we were doing with it, that would be more problem than I think it would be worth.
I agree. I mean, most of the things we've needed money for, we've asked, we wanted a tablecloth, or for other small things, buy plants and stuff. But the more money you get, then you get into issues. But if we, as we go through this process, figure, these are kind of things we're going to do every year, then maybe that helps us figure out if we do need a budget, whatever.
Yeah.
Right, I think the new plan could reveal some yearly needs, or it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think having a budget for the plan and producing the plan and maybe gathering data or producing a document would be a worthwhile endeavor. Yep.
Just wouldn't rule out, I wouldn't rule out having a little bit of funding.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Liz, were you starting to say something
Eventually.
before?
No, I was just trying to think if there's
Budget.
anything else from that meeting. I know the initial goal of the meeting was to talk to Arlene about Jim had wanted to advertise in restaurants and grocery stores, and
Right.
I think she said she tried it or it wasn't very productive, or she wasn't terribly interested in.
She said she's never really thought about it from the supply side, where the stuff's coming from, just the end user. And it didn't seem like she was that interested. And also about signage, I guess. Then we got into the conversation about,
Yeah,
creating
they're
more.
they're going to design a sign, and then Public Works will pay for some signs.
So I have a question. So
yeah.
if a restaurant reapplies for a license every year, couldn't we, when they reapply for their license, remind them that they could sign up for composting? Is there a way we could incentivize that? Again, I know we need a budget, but it just seemed like there are times when you just remind people to do it, look at it. Could we be on the back of the vehicle sticker? Is there any, little things that don't really cost anything to remind people to think about doing it?
Jenny, was it during our conversation where they talked about possibly doing the business award again? Was that meeting?
Yeah, I was,
Okay.
while you were talking, that reminded me of that. We were talking about having, because Evan, and I can't remember the name now, but just before our meeting, the day of our meeting, an email had come out from Evanston about they have some new business recognition program or something. I forget the name of it now. And we've talked about on and off for years about having a green business award, business of the year kind of thing, like they do with the regular business of the year. And I think that would be a way to get that on the minds of businesses, because if we put this out there that there's this award, and I don't know if any of them would care about it, but maybe just the publicity to have these go into the criteria of who gets awarded it, and so then it's something that they become aware of. So.
Yeah, I think that's something we can work on. And again, when we get more information from that greenhouse gas inventory, and we kind of see what the consultant identifies, maybe the high priority things in Skokie are more points, or we can kind of create that program. I will say I came from the beautification commission, and the awards programs are more work than what you might think that they are. And so I hesitate myself to sign up for that, just knowing how much work those beautification awards were. And so we'll have to think about staffing, and maybe that's where, some of those internships or, an AmeriCorps position or something might be helpful, would be to run a program like that.
My company, A+ Pest Control, we were around, we did green pest control, and we got that award to the Skokie Business of the Year 2016-17. And I'm still doing green now with products. So I don't know if that counts, but here I am. No more storefront though.
So I guess the other question is too, I mean, if we want to, is there a way that we can incentivize? I think, Bob, you were bringing up incentivizing composting, and then even de-incentivizing waste production, right? Is there a way that we can sort of divert, create it so that there's a financial, it's more beneficial to compost than it is to have that diverted into waste, right? So even creating a smaller waste container or something like that.
Yeah, those options are all on the table. You know, Jenny and I were just going to mention tonight, if you've been following the budget process.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome to watch the Public Works session. I think it was on, I can't remember if it was May 10th or May 13th, but you know, there is a proposed refuse fee out there right now. That's going to go to board again, you know, for the budget, and then there would, you know, if that passes that, there would be another board hearing for an ordinance for the fee. It's difficult to do everything immediately because we're locked into contracts right now. And container sizes, you know, that would cost us probably $2 million to roll out the new container sizes. And so, you know, all of these things are on our mind. You know, I've reviewed 50 different cities in the United States to get information. Max has certainly put in a ton of work on, you know, different options. And so we're just seeing this first step as having something in place, you know, to be used for change like that in the future. But we don't know how that's going to play out yet. The recycling market is crazy right now. We don't know how that's going to settle down. We don't know how our contract pricing is going to come in. We don't know how the public is going to react, you know, to the fee information. And so there's a lot of unknowns there, but we're certainly reviewing everything that we can, and taking those considerations into place, you know, to make those behavioral changes.
Yeah. No, and you know, my comment actually is coming with Seattle in mind because I used to live there and they had a really great system. Like, I'm sure you probably, what's that?
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that one because I actually pointed that one out to Max. They have an 8-gallon container,
Right.
$25 a month, and then the Skokie size is like $120 a month.
Yeah, but composting is free. Like curbside composting for community members is completely free, and you can put everything in there. All your animal proteins, everything can go in there. But it's also a much bigger, I mean, they have their own composting facilities, right? It's a much bigger town.
Well, the refuse market also is very different out in the West Coast.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think there's also, it seems like, at least based on what I was looking, when we were looking into the whole issue of composting, I think a number of years back, we kind of also looked into like Portland and San Francisco and had sort of reached out to them to sort of get some, you know, their takes on things. And it does seem like they have very well-established systems. It sounds like more along the lines of what you're talking about, I think, in Seattle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and Seattle has been doing this since like 2007 or something. I mean, it's been around forever. So I think, and, you know, thinking about it, I think it would probably be much more effective and efficient as a regional like program and not just, you know, one village of 70,000 people. Like, that's just not, I don't think that that's really feasible.
Yeah, you're, there, you know, there is a compost site that we're keeping an eye on. It's kind of over by Oakton Community College.
Cool.
It's not, there's just some work to do on that site yet. So we've been keeping an eye on that. That can be a game changer for composting in the area if we can bring in one of those sites a little bit closer. You know, obviously that drastically reduces the cost of transportation and things like that. So yeah, I think there's good things ahead, you know, as far as being able to change behavior and work with, but it's challenging right now, you know, that the recycling is costing a ton of money. And like I said, to do the container sizes, I think would cost us about $2 million to roll that out. So,
yeah.
You know, if we can link that to a new contract, maybe the contractor can take on some of those upfront capital costs and roll that into pricing or what have you. And again, this hasn't been passed. We don't know how the public is going to react. The garbage pickup situation in Skokie, people, you know, they're about half the village just loves their second collection, and half the people, you know, say they don't need it. You know, so it's a very polarizing subject here.
Well, the village likes to be normal, and I don't think a second pickup is normal. And, from my perspective, when I look at it as a level of service, the amount of effort that I have to go through to recycle or to dispose of hazardous waste or e-waste, and the second pickup of a nearly empty garbage container is completely and entirely superfluous. And it just seems to me that if we have an opportunity to reallocate the resources, whether it's staff or equipment or whatever, to something more effective in terms of, one, reducing waste and reusing materials, I'm willing to pay a garbage fee of $8 a month or $20 a month or whatever you're looking at to do that.
Right, like have a compost pickup instead of a
Exactly.
like a curbside compost pickup instead of
I
having
don't need a truck to come by and check my empty garbage can twice a
well,
week.
and certainly if it was a compost pickup instead of a garbage pickup, I mean, I think that, a large majority of waste pickup could be compost, right?
We could certainly reduce it, but the second it's really just kind of an irritant when I have to shove stuff into my recycling bin or pick up stuff that is in the alley that is blown out of overstuffed recycling bins, and I got a truck that comes by and checks my empty garbage container.
Yeah.
A second time.
Well, I mean, it could be done like yard waste is and on demand, but the other thing we're also forgetting about too is that, like, if you have garbage for a long time too, is that the squirrels like to go to town and then destroy the garbage bins and everything.
Well,
so.
check out. We
But a
have
week is not
plenty
a
of
long
municipalities.
time.
We have
Yeah.
municipalities all around us that have one garbage pickup.
We're like we're the oddity.
I'm playing devil's advocate, okay? I'm not.
I know,
saying
and I'm
yeah,
telling you,
that's
I am
insane.
telling you, all those arguments are meaningless when you look at the reality of what's going on around in Northeast Illinois.
It does seem like when you look at, I think, not that I have some sort of extensive knowledge on the subject, but it does seem like pay-as-you-throw systems can be a major incentive, though, I think, to get people to kind of really think about how much waste they're generating and to sort of reduce the amount of waste and increase the amount of recycling and composting they do. So, I mean, I think there is, at least from that perspective, a strong argument to transition to more of a perhaps like a pay-as-you-throw kind of thing.
Liz, are the
We-
consultants, sorry, you were saying, Liz, really quick, with the consultants that you're hiring, are they also going to look at waste product, like waste level?
Absolutely. That's one of the items
Okay.
on.
Cool.
Sorry, Jenny.
Oh, I was just saying, I mean, somebody mentioned that on the coasts, it's a different ballgame, and we've got land in the Midwest, and so we don't really think of the costs. Starting a new landfill is just, we can do that, and that's kind of that's been why it's easy to throw out more garbage. In other places they actually think about that, other than where there's been a conscious effort to do it for the right reasons, but we haven't had to think about it. And a refuse fee, even somewhat nominal fee, puts that concept in front of people. Even if to start, you don't change the level of service, it just makes you think of it as an actual cost. And then you start thinking, well,
Right.
if this is what I'm paying for this, what if we had this service instead? What would that cost me? When there's no cost associated with these things, you don't have to think about it, and you don't necessarily make the best or better choices.
It's a completely irrational economy when we put an emphasis on the level of effort to do something sustainable, and we make it as convenient as possible to be as wasteful as possible.
Yeah, agreed. Like, I feel like we need to decrease the barriers to participation and de-incentivize the behavior that we want to change, not the other way around, right? It seems like, going back to what you were saying, Charlie, that like being sustainable is not more costly. It actually in some ways can be, right? And so how do we decrease that cost in order to encourage that behavior that we want to see, that we want to see people participate in?
Yep. All right. Charlie, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'll wait until the end of the meeting. I have a question for Rob.
Okay. All right, so that we don't dig too deep into this issue right now because it's still on the table, as per prior agreement. The last thing on our agenda is, and this is again for Liz, the vehicle sticker inventory that Chris had originally asked about.
Yeah, I'm actually going to turn it over to Chris. Chris, did you have a chance to work on anything?
Yes, I've had a chance to work on stuff a little bit. I've actually been having to reformat my computer so it can handle the amount of data that it's dealing with, just because the data sets are so large and so complicated. The stuff I have has just been very, very slow. But no, it's an interesting fact. I was starting to do the breakdowns of what brands we have, what vehicles and stuff. And I was going to ask is, for the overall data, do you guys want me to, like, I can give for the next meeting, or I'm going to email you guys out stuff. I'm probably going to go with a simple CAF, what each fleet one is, and then break from there while I'm doing the more extensive data plotting, just so you guys have a basis of kind of where we're looking at for like efficiency of the vehicles are and stuff. But I'm going to be breaking stuff down by year, model, brand, etc., and almost anything we could think of. And then I wanted to figure out what you guys think of mileage driven in Skokie specifically. I should be targeting, if you have anything in particular, or just go with a standard 10,000 mile yearly average and just go from there.
What is the 10,000 mile yearly average based on?
It's kind of an estimated yearly drive for average car ownership in the country.
So I have major concerns about this because I feel like we don't have any frame of reference for like any type of, how do we assign like any type of mileage to these vehicles? Like we have no idea what these behaviors are. We have no idea like what, like I feel like this is like.
Well, I was going to be primarily taking data of what is a national average of local driving versus long distance driving, et cetera, with that. And then I can go into more detail, but just having a basis of what we have with the vehicles we're working on is a good start. And then we can go from there. I mean, I could even put out a survey of what do people drive normally. I mean, we could go from there. But having an initial start is the place to go.
So Chris, just remind me again, I remember vaguely this conversation, but what are we trying to glean from this information again?
Just direct greenhouse gas emissions, from the vehicles.
Yeah. Okay. And we're looking at by the type of vehicles to get an estimate of how much we generate.
Yeah. And then also I can also use it as a basis of looking at what type of vehicles we have ownership, which also associates to what trends of transportation people are. Like, is it a bigger SUV versus smallest compact? Like, what's like the percentage of electrical vehicles that we could then do that on a yearly audit or something too, or, and so forth. Like vintage plate vehicles can't drive so much amount of times a year. So it's probably a very small percentage, but there's information from all the data from what I have. I can already glean some stuff. It's just trying to computate it right now is where I've just been trying to work with.
And so then what's the goal with this? Like if we ultimately know like what vehicles people are driving in the village, how are we going to use that to like, what's going to be our goal with that?
Well, from the one point is just having point source emissions, for especially in relations to the audit, what is, point source emissions potentially for citizens only by transportation versus other things. And then from there, we also can use, like how we said, the transportation habits of the area, and how it can help us shape for planning of anything with transit, really, or like, how do you focus, like, can you focus potentially more bikeability if you have people who are driving, the SUV, but is there like 5 people in there or is it 1? These are all the different things that you go further down.
Yeah, I think there could be a benefit. A lot of this is, we tend to look at either or, and it really is, there's some gradation. Like, so
yes,
if there are things we can do to reduce the number of trips that people are taking, we can reduce the number of miles that people are driving by an increment, and there can be some substantial benefit to that. And I think that having a baseline like this to work with, even if it's flawed initially based on a generalized estimate, would at least give us some sense of what kind of data we can look at and say, okay, what can we do as a village to reduce the number of trips that are required just by just by the very way we set things up, right? And if we can create an environment where fewer trips are necessary, or people are going to choose alternates than driving, then we can reduce the number of trips and we can realize a certain amount of benefit from that. And I think that would be a useful thing too.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, it's the very beginning stages of this, you know. So I just have the list and everything, and with the years, and like I said, is that it's a lot of data. So Excel and other programs like to use a lot of stuff, and so that's why I had to reformat my laptop, and hopefully it'll handle it.
Yep.
So that was my holdup a little bit this week of trying to get to that, since I just got it last week, but I already gleaned like a little information of just the different brands we have going and that stuff, which, you know, my brain was already working on certain things. So
First, if it helps you to map out the data for, like if you want to know, for example, if you're seeing electric vehicles near our charging stations or something like that, you can send me that data set and I can get anything mapped for you as well.
yeah, that'd be okay. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, yeah, I can work on that.
So, and then are the consultants also going to be doing, like studies where they're at a certain point, like traffic studies basically, and traffic use patterns and transportation pattern studies?
No, it's more of a straight inventory of, they'll be looking at energy data, solid waste data,
Air
some of
quality.
what Chris is, doing some emissions data. And so it's not, there's not going to be any traffic studies.
Yeah, it's not a comprehensive.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, my husband's a data scientist, so if you need help with like data management and resources, we certainly have that capability.
Get his
Okay,
email,
I
Chris.
probably will be hitting you up then.
Yeah, get his email right away.
Yeah.
Great.
So, but yeah, that's all I got for right now. I mean, I haven't had much time to play with it. Like I said, just got it last week and was getting stuff set up. So hopefully the goal is for the rest of this week to really start getting into the meat of it. So
Is it mapped according to address? Like addresses, like
no, it's
the cars?
mapped by each vehicle, make and year and model.
Oh, I can probably link those to the address to the geo mapping though. Yeah.
That's a little
Yeah.
bit. That's a little
That's
bit. I have some questions about.
Just leave my address out of that list.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There's no private data with the one that I have currently at the
Probably
moment.
should not do that.
So,
Yeah, the way that the maps show, basically they would be like these generic kind of heat maps or something of where we would have
I
higher
see.
amount. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the certain vehicles that like we're especially interested in, like electric vehicles or something, we
Right.
could have heat
Exactly.
maps.
well, and there's one vintage vehicle that everyone would love, but I'm not going to bring it up right now. But there's one thing that went, oh, we have one of those here. So
2007 Prius.
no, a 1950 something. But that's all I'm going to go to right now. But if you saw it driving around, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. So, but yeah, no, that's what I'm working on. It's just, yes, your make and model, and it's all that. And then with because with a certain model between certain years, there are big discrepancies depending on what they went for emissions and stuff too. Like just by engine stuff and certain things, or like, was it a diesel model? Was it a gas model? So forth.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good.
Yep.
Next, actually, that's the last of our new business. The next thing on our agenda is our next meeting, which I think is the 26th.
So Jenny, I wanted to ask Rob. a
Oh,
quick
right, you had a question for Bob. Go
So
for it.
Rob, I was reading that you're in plastics. I was reading that Turkey is refusing to take European recycles plastic, which is going to upend the market in Europe. I would love to pick your brain about what's going on with plastics. Have a session to just have an understanding. I hear about these things, I read about these things, and I realize I really don't understand that market at all. And I would love your perspective on that. If you'd be
Sure.
willing to share that at some point, maybe have
Sure,
a
I don't know if
session.
you want to do it in a meeting or just go out to lunch, but
Okay.
it's pretty interesting times right now.
Yeah.
With
Throw me in with that too.
Yeah, I'd be super interested in that.
So, I'd also be really interested to know what our, if we get a revenue share on our recycling right now, because, baled HDPE milk jugs, there's 90 cents a pound right now. So,
Give me your milk jugs, everyone.
yeah, drink milk. uh, that whole situation is again due to sort of unethical, abusive policies, and lack of infrastructure in the countries from which waste is generated. We just have a lot of landfill space in this country, so we're able to kick the can down the road in at least in the middle of the country. So, we don't have the infrastructure that we need, but we have a good landfill infrastructure. So we're able to at least manage the waste. Other countries don't have that same ability, and the costs are so much higher. And so they try to do things that they shouldn't, and then they get caught. And it's a big embarrassment for everybody. So, but there's a whole lot going on right now that's really interesting.
So I'll take the lead on coordinating either maybe we can do it in person in somebody's backyard, or we could do it virtually, but have a gathering where we tap into this resident expertise and exploit it as much as reasonably possible.
Please do it in person, or at least have that option.
Yeah,
Please
no,
in
if you're
person.
willing to just have a conversation, because there's so much of this stuff, I would just love to hear what you know and get some perspective on that, because there's so much that I just don't fully understand, and it's somewhat baffling to me. So
Sure.
I would really appreciate it.
I have a question, if you don't mind be taking a minute. So how many people in this call look at the product they buy to see if there is a symbol, a number on the bottom of it?
Yep.
Okay. So when you see that there's a number on whatever it is, whether it's a food container or some other product you buy, do you assume that because there's a number on it that it's recyclable?
Nope. Well, I don't.
I don't.
I would assume that if there's a number on it, that it's some form of recyclability. Yeah.
See, all our bottles that we make with the products are all recyclable. They're all number 3, I think, which is the non-food grade highest level.
Okay.
So the number is actually something called the RIC, the Resin Id Code. It has nothing to do with recyclability. It's just telling people what the resin is. And it is controlled by the ASTM. And there is a major debate going on in recycling now about what do the arrows mean? What do the numbers mean? Because 38 states have legislation that relate to the number, but there's no uniform meaning of what the number is, other than what the material is.
I will
Do-
say,
When we used our products in the pest control business, we recycled the bottles and filled them again. My guys took things and filled them. So we fill
Agreed.
products again, and I make products now, and I cover labels even now, and use the same bottles that are clean, and it's the same product, enzymes, and use the same product.
That's good. Reuse is the best. So I'm just asking because the trade association I'm in all the recycling groups I'm in, this is all being debated, and California is mandating that if something is quote unquote not recyclable, you have to take the arrows off of it. It's a mess trying to figure this out.
I was just going to ask though, since you're in the sort of field, I don't know what you think, but I did notice that some of the new packaging, they did start to sort of kind of redesigned some of it, where it will say like carton is made out of paper and, you know, recycle when empty or whatever, recyclable when empty. I don't know if that's any better, like the redesigned label that they have. I don't think it has a number on those. I'm not 100% sure, but I have seen more and more of it, which is supposedly meant to simplify the whole thing. I don't know how much it actually helps.
Yeah,
Seems like Amazon was doing something with that too. I don't know if they were part of a larger group, but they were trying to come up with a simpler way of designating recycling, and I just found it more
yeah.
confusing.
Well, the EPA has its definitions. The Federal Trade Commission has its definitions. So if you can't recycle an item within 65%, 60% of the United States, then you can't say it's recyclable. That's a federal trade claim. This is it's kind of a mess. And so that's why I was just asking, you know, I think the interim position is to just take the arrows off, stick to the RIC for what it's for, and think about how we could eventually have a national standard of what it all means. But, you know, trying to get something passed that way now is challenging. But there's a lot of discussion going on. There's something also going on called the RMS, Recycling Material Standard. It's a new standard that's coming out. And again, it's mostly definitions and how you define recyclability. And it takes into account not only mechanical recycling, but advanced recycling, which is converting plastic back into paralytic oil. And then that is turned into monomer, and that's turned back into resin. It's a circular process. So my company is in the middle of that. We're doing it in
Does
Europe.
that create fuel? Is that what the?
No,
is
it's not
that-
for fuel.
It's not for fuel.
No,
Okay.
it's to make a new monomer.
Okay.
So you basically could make, you start with polyethylene, you wind up with polyethylene or polypropylene back to polypropylene. So it's not for fuel.
Okay, because I know
Yeah.
also I heard recently that turning plastics into fuel is actually more efficient than recycling. It's a more efficient use of resources.
The only thing is it's not circular, so it's probably better than landfilling it, but I think the objective is to make it a more circular system.
Oh no,
So-
what I heard was that it was it was better than recycling. Like it was more efficient than recycling, than being
Well, what do you,
than melting down and recreating plastic from that.
the LCAs on mechanical are way better than waste energy or that kind of, because let me get this right. The emissions for mechanical recycling are better than virgin plastic production.
Mm-hmm.
They're better than chemical conversion back into fuel. It's better. It's always better. The only problem is that it's limited. So you can only so you really need a combination of different methods to recover the value.
Mm-hmm.
But most people would not consider plastic to fuel recycling.
Okay.
No one, the EU doesn't, the EPA doesn't.
I'll have to look up where I heard this. I heard it
Now
recently.
I would like to see that, but I mean,
Yeah. Because it's
you know.
new and I was like shocked, absolutely shocked. So I'll have to look it up.
Yeah,
You know,
Charlie, we'll wait to hear from you on coordinating the.
Yes, I'll take the lead on that. I'll work on something with
We
Rob
can,
and we'll send out an invitation.
we can drink beer in recyclable bottles and
Right. There you go.
Glass.
Like,
Sounds good.
Jenny, I did
Okay.
one
Yeah.
quick bonus item. So Max had forwarded me the
Yeah.
vendor for electric bird scooters. And so I did have like a quick meeting with that company today. I just wanted to let everybody know. And we just kind of talked about how fast the scooters go and, maybe how rolled out with Skokie and things like that. And so just wanted to let you know that we're having those conversations. Electric Bird does not have docks. And so, there are some, as you kind of look up that on the internet, as you know, of being kind of left in the middle of the sidewalk and, things like that. And so they're coming up with better solutions for those problems. A little bit about the scooters is they can control, how fast they're set. And so if they do get rolled out in Skokie and it seems like they're going too fast on the sidewalk, or they can draw geo fences and then limit the the speed of whether they're going to be on the trail or downtown, or those types of things. And so it's just kind of neat. I'm going to talk with Max and Matt Brandmeier a little bit more on it, and see what they think. And I know the vendor's very interested in talking to this group, so if there's interest, we'll move ahead with learning a little bit more about them.
What's the difference between their system and some of the others, like Lyft, or there's a number of them. And
They're all
also,
kind of similar.
Can you ask what they do with the scooters at the end of life?
Oh,
Do they recycle them?
Yeah, the life cycle of scooters is a question.
So
They actually, I know they actually sell a bunch of them. Like I know people who bought like ones that they've taken out of their rotation and everything and stuff.
so
actually, they use recycled materials in it too. But
yeah,
either way, I'm just interested in what the difference between one or the other is.
yeah. One downside that I noticed to them is I think people would want to use them on our Skokie Valley Trail, but they can only operate in our jurisdiction. So it's not like you could grab it on the SVT and then head down to Lincolnwood. So that's and you can't grab it and go up to the Botanic Garden in 2 years. When that gap between Dempster and Gulf is closed. They would need to have every jurisdiction along the way, to have approval and have the right codes and ordinances in place. So, there's some challenges, but they like to think of themselves as the last mile. It's kind of almost like the Amazon system. So, if you think about it, maybe there's people not in town that are not using the Oakton or the Dempster Swift because they're just out of that walking range. And so, or contrary, if we've got people coming up from Chicago, they could hop on a scooter and go to Old Orchard or get to our downtown, or those types of things. They see that they say that their use is typically for that, as they analyze their use patterns, that it's not as recreational as what you would think, that it really is destination based. So just some
Yeah, I've seen in other cities and know people who actually use it for last mile transit, because it's like one for a friend. He's like, he can't have a bike at his place. He just doesn't have the room. And so he uses that for when he travels to certain spots and things. So they could be pretty cool. Question is, are we going to get demos?
So yeah, he told me, and I'm hoping I can go up for a field trip. He said Rockford has them right now, and it's kind of fully rolled out. And then Racine, Wisconsin is getting their first group of them. They typically figure out a percentage of their total fleet that they do as a trial. That's about 7%. So Racine is supposed to be getting them, I think, this summer too, if anybody's up there.
They were part of the Chicago pilots as well, right?
Yeah, they're in Chicago as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are a number of cities that have them. It would be interesting to talk to them and see what their pitch is.
As long as we can have them not like ditched in the middle of a sidewalk and stuff, That's the only thing, is that sometimes they're just put in the worst spots.
Yeah, so I did talk to them about that. They say their solution is they find a business partner that would be local and in Skokie to manage those scooters, and then also they analyze the geographical data of where the scooters are often left, and then they can work with the village after a period of time, I don't know if that's a year or whatever that is, and identify preferred parking locations. And so it sounds like the company has some incentives. If you take a selfie and you're wearing a helmet, they'll give you a discount. So, maybe they'll develop something like that, where if you return the scooter back to the preferred parking, you'd get, $1 off, or, just stuff like that they come up with.
I mean, it seems like it's potentially a good thing to have, especially since I think we're talking about, getting people to be essentially less dependent on personal vehicles, and getting them to use other alternative modes of transit, obviously, as a way of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So, I think any little thing can help. And obviously, the more alternatives you have to personal vehicles, arguably the better. So it certainly can't say I have a lot of personal knowledge about them, but it does seem like it's pretty popular in certain spots. So
Can we tie it into the sidewalk program and have them fund sidewalks to
Oh, yeah.
ride them on?
Well,
I was just
Well,
in
actually, that's a
I was
good
just in
question.
Minneapolis, and these ones are everywhere. But at least in like the city part, not the suburbs, the streets are laid out there differently, so they're just not like the Dempster streets that we have. And then even so, people can ride them in the street. Here, if we're talking about riding them on the sidewalk, do we have the infrastructure for sidewalks? Most of the major thoroughfares do, some of them don't. But just to.
Yeah, no, I mean, they actually did the research on us and specifically recruited us because they were a good candidate. So
I'd be interested in what their criteria were for what makes Skokie.
So the grid system, we have a mostly complete sidewalk system. We've got the train stations and bus systems, and so we're a good candidate for that last mile.
So do they assume sidewalk use then?
Yeah, it sounds like
I think so. Yeah. So, that's with anything that is obviously a huge concern. And so that's what they were saying is they can adjust, they can draw these geo fences. And so like if you would be on the Skokie Valley Trail, they could set the speed limit, for that. They could set maybe like residential streets at a different speed limit, just things like that. Maybe if they're on the main street bike lane, that could be their highest speed limit is 15 miles an hour, and then their lowest is 6.
15 is too slow. Sorry.
Someone needs to check the codes because I thought a long time ago I saw that motorized vehicles are not permitted on our sidewalks.
Yeah, so you're right, Lisa. They identified that as that would obviously have to be changed.
Also,
we're not even proposing that this is being changed right now. I just thought I would let you. It's been brought up at meetings, and so I just wanted to let you know that the vendor reached out.
Okay. Yeah, good point, Lisa. I mean, even I don't know how if he's falling the category of bikes, but if bikes aren't allowed on sidewalks in the
it's motorized vehicles
downtown, right. But these are also wheeled vehicles, not strollers, that they're not allowed on sidewalks in downtown business district. So how would that fall into place with that rule?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be one of those things, right? We, like I said, Max and Matt will review to even see if they even want to talk any further on this. But you guys have brought up Divvy and some other options, and so I just wanted to bring it up as we talked to a vendor.
Yeah, I think our conversations around the bike share in the past is that what we'd like to see an emphasis on is improved facilities before the village invest resources in sort of some share service, because the village is not really set up for optimally for biking. I mean, there's important things that are going on that are positive, but one of the big problems with biking or non-motorized transportation in Skokie is the traversing these the arterials and getting across the expressway and getting and there are limited opportunities for that. And so that's why when we've talked about like the bike share, like let's focus on making sure the facilities are good so that people can get to where they're going. That should be our emphasis at this point, to creating an environment that is more conducive to that kind of transportation rather than introducing a new service or committing resources to do a new service. But I'd be interested in what Bird would be, what they feel would be the opportunity. And if they're looking at saying, well, we need to make an exception for scooters on sidewalks, to be honest with you, I'd be a little reluctant about that because, it creates a conflict, right, between pedestrians and scooter traffic. And I would rather have a situation where we had a facility on the street where you could have a non-automobile, either a scooter or a bike, that was more comfortable using the street, and rather than putting scooters and bikes on sidewalks. So that would be my bias or my perspective on that.
Which I was going to say too, wouldn't it be better in a way, safer, potentially used wherever possible in a bike lane rather than?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would tend to
And
agree with that.
another, you know, I did ask them the age limit, and so you do have to be 18 to ride, and so that does eliminate. I would think a lot of the high schoolers might be interested.
Yeah.
in that. Yeah, especially the ones that don't have a car yet. So, so they're not eligible. Yeah.
Thanks. With that, let me open my calendar again 1 second. Okay, so our next meeting is supposed to be the, hold on, I lost my page, 22nd of June, which would be the 4th Tuesday. I don't know if I'm available that day, but I hypothetically could be, or if we can meet the 29th. Anyone? Liz?
Either one works for me.
Okay, can we do the 29th?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you.
I won't be
All
there,
right.
but carry on.
We cannot. Okay, so hold on. Got 2 computers, that's it, right?
I assume there's no 4th of July parade this year?
What was that?
No 4th of
Is there
July
a 4th of
parade?
July parade?
It was
I don't know.
canceled the last time that I checked on it. I don't know.
Right.
If it got reinstated.
Next year,
Off now?
next year, SEAC in the 4th of July parade.
We've been in it before.
Okay, we'll
Yes.
do it bigger.
Do it again next year, maybe. Okay.
With Jim's
We'll
wagon.
be on our scooters.
They're just handing out milkweed. Yeah.
There you go. Instead of Kansas.
Breeze on Oakton Street.
Okay, Liz, were there any public comments?
No, I was just checking. I gotta check my email because I can come in there.
Lisa, did you have a friend, Debbie, that called me? It's Rick.
I'm sorry, what?
You have a friend named Debbie that called me for some products? She said,
Oh.
Lisa,
I don't think that was me.
was it you? I thought it was.
I don't think
Okay.
so.
Well, thank you. Sorry, I'll find out who Lisa is. It's someone in Skokie.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Any-
By the way,
any
everybody, I put it in
comments?
the chat that I wrote an article for Natural Awakenings magazine that comes out in June, next week, I think. And Peggy Malecki, who's a co-host of the Mike Novak show, she's the publisher. And I wrote an article that's coming out in her magazine, How to Keep Ants Out Naturally. So you can find that. I put my link of how you can get it from my website on the chat.
Okay, no public comments. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Emily, and a second by Emily. All right. Great.
Thank you so much.
See you guys next month. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Have a good month.
Bye-bye.